You have to have a lot of grace and grit, and grace for yourself and grit to keep going.
It's not necessarily that I'm confident that I can do anything. I'm confident that I can overcome the challenges that come with it.
If you're trying something, even the smallest thing, you're still moving forward and you're learning from that. And I think a lot of progress comes from what you learn along the way.
And you never really know if what you're doing is right, unless, of course, you see the results. But even then, like, if you're anything like me, you're thinking in the back of your mind, like, was it smart or was it lucky?
Welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. I'm really excited today to have two reinventors on our program. And these two reinventors went through, obviously, our 10-week reinvention program, and they did it together. So they had this experience together. Both of them are retail in nature, so they had a lot in common. And I think we all learned a lot together and dug deep into that whole retail business, all the challenges that come with it. So we have Melissa from Falls Boutique, and we have Nick from Sam's Outdoor and More. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Go ahead, Melissa.
I'm Melissa. I own Falls Boutique. We're coming up on our 5th year, and downtown Granite Falls. And we're sort of a collaborative boutique and just try to have a variety in this small little community.
Thanks, Melissa. How about you, Nick?
I'm Nick with Sam's Outdoor and More. Our store is more of a sporting goods store / kind of a little bit of variety of everything, but hunting and fishing is our main focus. We've been in business for about a year and a half and just kind of navigating the landscape of a new business, just trying to find our feet, basically.
Yeah, and both of you have a really unique origin story, and I kind of wanted to start with that because I feel like both of your stories are relatable to different people that have been through our program. So, Melissa, you were in a place where you owned a space and you were using it for something else and had to make a decision about what to do in that space, which I think inspired you to build this new business. So it was a little bit a result of being creative with some space and resources you already had and what to do with them. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that was a crossroads that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, I had my photography studio in this building, and photography I didn't shoot as much in studio. It was more on location. So we actually put the building up for sale, and really did not have any luck with that. And at one point, we had a family situation, and I'm like, okay, I need to step it up here. I need to either sell this building or figure out what I can do to use this building, because either way, I'm going to have to pay for it. So we started out with just having vendors, like right before Christmas, and everybody came in, we filled it up, and it was a wonderful experience because people could come and they could showcase what they had to sell, but they didn't have to worry about environmental things or renting a gym space. It was more private. So we started with that, and then it was really successful, and people are like, oh my gosh, I wish we had something like this all the time, to have a store, that had a variety, but yet Monday through whatever, Friday or Saturday, we could go and know that we could stop in and grab some stuff. And it really just sort of transpired from that. I invested a small amount, and everything that I made from that, I invested back in. And here we are almost 5 years later, and it has grown to about every square inch of that building that I can use.
It's just such a great story about how to take an idea and walk forward with it and take steps towards the goal, but not feel like you have to leverage everything to do it. And so how would you describe the business today with that start? How would you describe where you're at right now in terms of the size of your business and the type of business?
We're 5 years out, and we're still investing a lot back in. So, it's sort of scary because you are putting pretty much everything back into the business, but I can't even tell you how many percent bigger we are. We legit have used every square inch. I don't even know how many different lines we have in there. We try to find something for everyone at every price point. So I started looking around the store yesterday and I'm like, okay, we have no space. So I'm starting to look up like, oh, what can I hang from the ceiling? That's the only place that's left. But I mean, we have seen a lot of growth, and it took a few years for, people to come in to try new things. We've sort of went through our product line, taken some out that weren't good sellers, reinvested in some that are. And that's sort of the joy of the job too, is continuously trying to find new products that you think people will use and love, and introducing them. And the ones that don't, moving them along.
Yeah, it's an incredible story to go from sort of photography to retail and then get to the place you're at today. How many square feet is your store?
It's just about 4,500 total, but I think we're using right now probably about 3,000. We have some that's storage and office space, so not all of it's accessible to customers. But I have taken out closets, I've taken out everything, and just made extra nooks and crannies that we can use to get product in.
And I know you said you don't know how many lines you have, but I've been in your store. I'm going to say there's thousands of products in your store. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say there's a tremendous amount. So
one question, and then we'll hear Nick's origin story. So Melissa, starting in photography and now in retail, hearing from you through reinvention, we can definitely feel your passion for the business that you've built, and it seems like such a fit for Melissa. How does it fill your bucket now to own a retail store, maybe even not knowing you were going to land in this place 7 or 8 years ago, right?
It honestly, I still have the creative side of it, because I still get to go out and create displays, go on adventures and find what I'm going to carry in the store. But what really fills my bucket is still having that communication on a daily basis with people, seeing them come in and they're like, oh, we're looking for the perfect little item, and being able to communicate with them and find out their sort of backstory, and finding that perfect gift, and almost coming in as a stranger and leaving as a friend. So it's the personal relationships that I'm building every time I help someone that comes in the door really is what keeps me going.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and we've experienced it. So it seems like a natural fit. Photography is very relational too, so I'm sure that there was a lot of carryover from your work there.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Nick, you have a very interesting origin story also. So your dad started the original version of the business, which was all online, I believe, an eBay type business model, and was pretty successful. And you had a history in retail. I know you managed some stores down in the southern United States, and at some point you and your dad decided, you know what, let's just go all in on this concept, and I'll join you and I will build the brick and mortar version of this store that you've created. Is that a fair summary of where you were at?
You kind of hit the nail on the head. My dad started it out of his basement and selling anything from sporting goods, clothes, jackets, things like that, some archery equipment, anything basically he could fit in a box and ship. And he did some local pickups and stuff like that. And he was successful, had a fairly profitable business. But the dream that he always had, and as long as I can remember, he always said, when I retire, I want to move down to a coastal town, open up a bait shop, and just sit there and sell bait to people and talk about fishing. And the real issue was he had no idea how to start a retail store. He was very good at e-commerce. He had a good mentor to teach him that stuff, but he didn't necessarily know how to do retail. And as anybody who's done retail or any research on retail, it's not necessarily an easy business just to break into and get everything right, basically. So my experience down in Texas, managing a chain of retail stores and learning through that experience over the course of 4 or 5 years. And then moving back up here to Minnesota and talking with him, and he's, we're just sitting there and it's like, we'd really like to do this. And at that moment of my life, I was like, I'd also like to do that. I'm working at a custom wood shop and I don't enjoy that. And it kind of sucks. So like if you're in, I'm in, let's give it a try. Worst case scenario, basically just go back to a different job, and it's no loss kind of thing. And it's kind of crazy, I guess, how it's morphed in the steps that we took, even just to find a location, which during the pandemic, we were looking in, what year did the pandemic start? 2019?
2020. Yep.
2020. Yeah, that's one. All the years kind of blend together at this point.
They do.
But even looking for a location in 2020, because we were looking summer of 2020, actually winter of 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and we had our eye on a location that didn't really work out, and then the pandemic hit, and we're like, yeah, that's terrifying. Maybe put this on pause. We gave that about 6 months, ish. And then in October, a space opened up, and we're like, looking at it like this would be the perfect space. We don't even know if retail stores are going to be able to be open. We're just coming out of lockdowns and things like that. So we're looking at it like this might be kind of a crazy gamble. And my father, though he did definitely start the business, he's not inherently a risk taker. And I am more of a gambler. And I told him, I said, like, realistically, if we're going to talk about all the reasons why we shouldn't start a business, then we probably just shouldn't. Otherwise, let's just do this thing and see how it turns out. And that was kind of it. We signed the lease right before Labor Day of 2020, actually the Friday before Labor Day, and spent a month getting the store updated because it actually was a used car lot / car detailing, and so it wasn't a retail space. So we went through and laid all the flooring, built walls, knocked walls down, got all of our inventory in, talked to our existing vendors, set up new relationships with new vendors, got all of this product in. And then it's just kind of been a roll since then, really just finding out what people in our area want, because we found out very quickly the sporting goods that we use, the boots we wear, the clothes we wear, the fishing lures, everything you can think of that we use isn't necessarily what everybody in the area uses. And I think that knowledge is only gained by being there, listening to people, and kind of curating your product selection to what you're hearing as far as feedback from your customer base. So it's been now a year and a half, a little bit north of a year and a half we've been open. And to look at it from when we opened, we had everything from boots to military surplus, a bunch of log furniture, all sorts of stuff, to now 2/3 of our store is fishing, the other third is hunting, and we've really been able to hone down exactly what we have and have a good idea of what people want. Still obviously always learning. But it's been a wild ride, but we're definitely on the right track. I can definitely empathize with what Melissa said. You're in this business, and it's not a get rich quick thing. When you're starting, we're still at the point where every dollar we make pretty much goes back into the business. There's not a lot of, we're not buying a jet, that's for sure. And just getting to that point, but after a year and a half, you start to be able to see the light at the end of that tunnel, and you're seeing, like Melissa was saying, it's exciting for her to still continually have, the 50% or 100% growth year over year kind of stuff. And I'm just now at the point where I can look back at numbers and say, wow, last March we did $2,000 worth of sales, and this March we did $12,000 worth of sales. That's, pretty encouraging. It's
Wow.
Not exactly where we want to be, but it's, you look at it on a spreadsheet, you look at it over the course of time, and you can see it's headed exactly where you want it to go, which is encouraging because it's not always very optimistic when you're just writing checks.
That's an incredible story, and what a neat thing to be able to do that with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you both are so passionate about the outdoor lifestyle and the products. So for everyone listening, in case you missed it, they leased a building and started a business in the middle of the pandemic, right out of a shutdown, in one of the industries that's been hardest hit by COVID, retail. So an incredible, incredible story. So both of you mentioned that you have been listening to customers and kind of customizing the store for your customers. So Nick, I'll start with you. How do you build a business for your customers, but for yourself at the same time? How do you strike the balance between figuring out what your customers want, learning that, and building around it, but then also for yourself, building a business that you love and want to be a part of?
So I think a key to it is kind of the foundation. So when I say that, I mean, what was our vision when we started the business? And not to say that vision hasn't varied slightly, left or right of where we were actually headed, but you've got to have a vision of what you dream it to be. And we started simple. Like, we just wanted to make a place that we'd like to shop. And so that's pretty easy to stay on that course, right? And have variations from the left or the right come in as you're walking down that path and getting to where you're going. And then being decisive. It's easy to have a customer come in, like, for example, I had a gentleman the other day say, "Oh, well, I really thought you guys would have stuff for reloading ammunition." It would be easy to say, okay, we got to call up our vendor and have a whole row of ammo reloading stuff because this guy asked. But to be able to discern, I guess, and it's important for the success of the business too, to be able to discern what's the lasting need and what's the need for the majority of customers versus that one-off kind of thing. Being able to make the right decisions, because if you start doing that one-off kind of thing, you're going to end up with shelves full of inventory. You're not going to be there for any customers within a few months. Kind of getting back to what I said at first, sticking to your core vision. Like, I thought our idea was good when we started. I think our idea is good now. But also being able to adapt along the way and make those small variations that have to happen to get to your end goal.
And once you started doing that, did it make you feel more confident and kind of give you a little more sense of, I don't know, joy or fulfillment out of the business when you start to feel that kind of momentum?
Oh, absolutely. Like, there's there's no doubt that it feels much better to see your business progressing than it does to watch it regress or stay stagnant. That's a terrifying spot to be in. And I guess in my mind, being stagnant is the same thing as regression. Like, if you're not getting better, you're actually might as well be getting worse. Because there was times, when we first started, obviously we knew what we sold online as far as product selection, but that's a whole different world than selling face-to-face in a retail location where your customer base is like the city of St. Joe, where we're at, about 2,500 people. We've got St. Cloud, the surrounding areas, that's 60 to 80,000 people, I guess, versus eBay, which is 27 million people. So you could have all sorts of products on eBay and somebody's going to want that. But in your retail store, can you have the product that maybe 80,000 of those people, and say a quarter of that 80,000 is actually it fits into your customer group? Are you going to know that? And we didn't. Like, we found out rather quickly that, hey, like, we thought we had all these spectacular products, and it was a little bit disappointing to have to admit to ourselves, maybe our products aren't that good, and maybe we have to change it up. Like, this, we think they're fantastic, but we can think they're great sitting here on the shelves, and we could probably just bring them home, put them in our house, and go work different jobs. To admit to yourself that you have overestimated myself on that one, and now we've got to change directions, is difficult. But when you see the exponential gains year over year, month over month, and listen to customers and hear about how satisfied they are, look at your reviews that you're getting, and they're all positive as you're kind of growing, and you're growing. Betsy, you like to use the phrase tribe, like you're growing this tribe that you have, and now instead of one or two customers that you see on a regular basis, you've got dozens, and they come in. We have one guy that drops off newspapers, about once a week. He comes in, and it's cool to see people and know that they actually they like what we've got going on.
And I think that's what I mean by feeling so fulfilled, because the increase in business is not just because there's more people walking through the door. It's because you've been evolving to be a place people really want to support and be a part of, and that's why I think you're growing. And that's then the word spreads, and of course then there's more people. But it's been a neat thing to see how humble you've been in terms of figuring out what needed to change and then just changing it and just, being decisive, as you say. So, Melissa, how about you? How did you listen to your customers and evolve in a place that felt like going to where you want to go with the business, but also, understanding from your customers where they want you to go with the business?
It's hard because I have the same experience as Nick, where you always have somebody come in and say, oh, well, I really needed this and you didn't have this. Could you get this? And you try to put it in perspective and sort of weigh that and how many people are going to. Normally I wait and see. I mean, there's been times where I have 5 people come in and ask for the same thing. It's okay, well, I maybe should look into this a little further, but it's really challenging in the sense that 1 month something can be flying off the shelves and then it's going to sit there for 6 months. It's everything is constantly changing. It depends on the time of the year. It depends on what people are going through, what the climate is. I mean, it's just, it changes so rapidly. So that's why I think it really helps that we have, and that's why I really tried to have such a variety, because we are in such a small community. I wanted to be able to keep the people in our community shopping locally, but yet still have enough volume where I could attract people from big cities that want to come and spend the day. The longest I've had someone in our store is 3.5 hours. And I'm pretty proud of that, because I'm I kept you busy for 3.5 hours. I mean, that's crazy. Where, and it's a fine balance, because you want to have enough, but you don't want to have so much that it buries you either. So it really is, I'm still walking that fine line, I think, because I sometimes get swept up in, say, seasonal stuff. I have my everyday stuff, but then it's okay, do I try and get some seasonal stuff for people to decorate their house? Do I not? So, I mean, all out, I went for Christmas last year, and that was very beneficial. So I'm sort of dipping my toes in, okay, I'm going to get a little bit more in depth with spring. See where that goes, but it's constantly a changing dynamic. I don't know. You don't know. And the thing is with everything, inflation going up, are people going to continue to spend that extra money to decorate their homes for holidays? Are they going to go back to the staples? It's really tough. And like I said, I'm constantly changing my store around too, because I'll have a product that'll sit there. No one will even look at it. The next month I'll go through and rearrange it, and I'm having to reorder. Every day is sort of a new experience, and I don't know, I haven't really found the right or wrong. I'm still trying out new things daily, it seems.
Does it seem like that'll always feel like that? Because
I think so.
It's almost like a class in psychology to understand your customers and the decision-making impacts. Yeah. So you mentioned inflation. I wanted to be sure for everyone listening who's in retail. I know this is a topic that, it's putting the crunch on everybody, but Nick, what's your view of where inflation's at right now and where it's going, and how are you managing that as a business owner in terms of managing your prices and margins and things?
I guess to sum it up, I mean, of course it's bad, and we get hit in the face with it because, the small stuff, we sell a bunch of ice fishing tackle, and we'd be placing stock orders to replenish once or sometimes twice a week during our busy time, and you notice it a little bit. But when you're buying a pack of jigs and it's a $4 pack of jigs and the cost went up by 5 or 6 cents and it's a 1% to 2% increase, you don't notice it as much as, say, for example, this spring, last month, when we started ordering in stuff for turkey hunting, and it's similar product or the exact same product that we carry for deer hunting in the fall. And I'm punching in the inventory, entering in our POS, and ours is so handy that it shows me what I paid for it last time. And it shows me a percentage increase, which is terrifying when you punch it in and it says, oh, you paid 25% more for this, and you're only getting 10% more in terms of retail price. It definitely puts a squeeze on, and I think and this is why I say we're still learning and figuring it out, because that has to be passed along to your customer somewhere along the way. Otherwise, you're not going to be in the business. The tricky thing is how much of it gets passed on to the customer, and where do you find the point in which they just stop buying? We haven't found it yet, but it's got to be out there. With that being said, it kind of goes back to what I said about starting a business, starting a retail store in a pandemic, is you've got to look at the things that you can control, and I can't control that. I can't. So I have to focus my energy on the stuff that is within my control and the things that I can do to increase that value of that product, whether it's the experience, the atmosphere, whatever it is. Like, there's got to be a little bit something extra to balance out. Okay, I'm paying $5 more. I've got to see that I'm getting $5 more value out of this product. So
that's such a good point. I'm not sure people see it like that always, taking that proactive approach where, yes, I'm going to charge more, but I'm going to also offer more value in some way, not directly with the product, but in the experience or in the store setting or in service in some way, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's a great way to think about it. Probably pushes you to be pretty creative too.
Yes.
Hey, I have a question for you, Nick. Not along the same theme. I'll go to Melissa with this inflation question too. But while you were talking about COVID and starting the business, we got to know you in reinvention, Nick, and you're a pretty tenacious guy. And it occurred to me that maybe even COVID kind of challenged you, and you seem like the kind of person that was like, you know what, this is the hardest possible time to start a retail business. So therefore, because I'm Nick, that's when I want to start the business, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make it happen. And it just strikes me that you kind of have that kind of edgy courage.
I would say sometimes my wife refers to it as absurd optimism or unfounded confidence. But really, like I said earlier, when you look at it, like if you look at any situation and you say, well, let's list off the pros and cons. Like I'm not a pros and cons guy. I don't like to look at it. Like if I want to list off reasons why not to do something, I can come up with a million, and I can talk myself out of it in a minute. I mean, when it comes to the confidence thing, it's funny. My wife and I just had a conversation about this because she's like, you're way overconfident. You think you can do everything. And I said, I thought about it over the course of the day. It was a conversation we had while we were drinking our coffee in the morning. And I came back and I was thinking about it all day. And we laid down in bed and I said, the thing you said this morning, I said, it's not necessarily that I'm confident that I can do anything. I'm confident that I can overcome the challenges that come with it. Like, do I think that I could paint the Sistine Chapel? No, but I could probably figure out a way to get somebody that could. And just my confidence in my resourcefulness, and tenacity is a good word, and some people will call it just plain stubborn. But this thing's going to work one way or the next.
Yeah, I think we picked up on that, and I think it's pretty inspiring. Yeah, resourcefulness, tenacity, all good qualities for an entrepreneur. Fantastic. Okay, Melissa, the inflation question for you, and I know because you also have that heavy seasonal aspect to your business, how have you managed price increases and supply chain issues, and what do you think that looks like over the next couple of years?
Well, first I have to say that Nick needs to do a side business, daily inspirations for business owners, just to get that out there. Inflation has been really, really hard on us. We've seen not only price increases for the products, but then a lot of our shipping specials, deals, caps have been taken off. And I had a company just the other day where you have to spend a certain amount every year in order to get free shipping. And I thought, well, geez, I really don't need this product right now, but I have little orders that go out here and there where those little orders without the freight caps and free shipping would be probably not feasible. So I had to, order this stuff, and I'm going to have to sit on it in inventory though, because I needed to keep that free shipping. Whereas like 5 years ago, with the prices back where they were, it would be, I could have a little flexibility. And some of my products, we already were sort of behind the 8 ball because bigger places like say Hy-Vee carries the same product. They already get, because they order in such volume, they already get better deals. So I really agree with Nick in the aspect where, yeah, you're creating an atmosphere. You're creating more of an experience where, and I've always tried to do that from the start where, with my displays and stuff, when you come in, I don't want it just to be a shopping experience. I want you to remember like, hey, I felt like so relaxed there. It was memorable. Something I saw jogged a memory, a scent. It was just like a relaxing zone. I could go and get the things I needed to. But I've had to, I try to keep it a happy medium. I obviously absorbed some of that inflation, and then some of it, it goes to the customer. I try to absorb as much as I can, because I feel like it is really hard, because with my prices going up and bigger places that can order in volume, I'm already behind there. And that's like my biggest challenge. So I really do concentrate on the customer, the personalization of, showing them our products, putting together baskets, putting together the perfect gift, and hoping that makes up for some of the price increase. But when you're talking a bag of coffee, per bag has went up $5. That's hard, because at what point are people going to say, well, I really love this specialty coffee, but my bank says I can afford Folgers,
Right. Right.
I mean, it is trying to find that happy medium. And so far, I think we've sort of been sharing that I've been sharing that inflation cost and trying to, like Nick said, find other ways to give back to the customers, to keep them coming, to know like, hey, we are different than walking into Walmart. We can give you a heck of a more genuine experience, and we're there for the support after, and for years to come.
Yeah, and I know you guys are doing your best to find that balance. So in our startup programming, we're talking to all small businesses. They're all small businesses like yours, and typically in smaller communities. So the downside of that is that you can't necessarily compete on price for, with these big box stores and with nearby metro areas. So that's a challenge. But on the plus side of that challenge, I think there is also the idea that you play an important role in your community, and you've developed a lot of community support, which maybe overcomes some of the pricing challenges. And so, Melissa, for you, what role do you think you play in your community, and how has your community supported you growing your business?
The community has really supported me in the aspect of just coming in, and not just coming in, but like when they see posts on Facebook, to share them, even if it means like, hey, I know I'm not going to get down there, but I'm going to share this post because somebody else might really need this or see this, and they might come in. And just by supporting us as far as word of mouth, bringing friends in. I can't tell you how many times like people come in and they're like, oh, these are my friends and family. They're down for the weekend, and we really wanted to show them your store. And they might even call and say, hey, when I was at your store, I tried this lotion. I absolutely love it. Do you ship? So it's sort of, they help us by, introducing us to their family and friends, and welcoming us into their inner circles too. So we,
which is a great dynamic and part of the feel good of being in a small community, right? Is you get that, you personally feel that kind of support, and not always, of course, but that is definitely one of the positive sides of being in a smaller community. Nick, in your community of St. Joseph, how has being in a small community helped you, and how has the community supported your business through COVID and in your growth?
Yeah, so the major benefit of being in a smaller community versus a bigger metro area, which is there's pros and cons to both, but I think that the pros of being in a smaller town, like I say, St. Joe's, about 2,500, 3,000 people, like word of mouth advertising is still a real thing. And, and it works. I joke with people all the time. They say, I'll tell all my friends about it. And I say, and I've got kind of a pattern answer to this, but it's like, we pay for radio advertisement, we pay for billboards, we advertise on Google and YouTube and Facebook, and everywhere that we can get our name out there, we're doing it. And we spent thousands of dollars a month at the beginning getting our name out there. But I would say probably 10 times the amount of people that come in saying that I saw your billboard say, I talked to my brother, he said, come in here, my cousin, my buddy, my friend, whoever it is. And to be able to leverage that and have kind of that personal connection and not be afraid to ask people to use it. Basically, like, hey, like, I think you enjoyed your experience here. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you told some people about us. Like, we're trying to start out here. Business is never easy, but we want to be here for a long time. And the only way we do that is for you guys, help us, basically, and ask for that help. I think in a smaller community, people are willing to do that. Whereas in a city like, say, Minneapolis, St. Paul, you could ask somebody to do that and they don't care. Like, they might tell a couple friends, but it's not going to spread throughout the entire downtown area, and all of a sudden your doors are getting blown out.
Right. And nothing really emphasized that more than COVID, right? When people realized that they could lose some of the businesses in their communities, and they became pretty intentional about that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it did bring a lot of awareness, whether it was just the sheer focus on how bad the struggle was for small businesses, retailers, restaurants, things like that, or that it got down to almost desperation time for a lot of these businesses. I know the town where I live, it's not anywhere close to anything. And we have a small hardware store, and it, during COVID especially, I saw the owner, Kevin, he literally had signs like, support us, otherwise we're going away. Basically, it got into desperation mode for a lot of businesses where they just needed to be very honest with their customer base and say, hey, like, we're really struggling and we really need your help. Otherwise, like, this whole thing's going to die. And I think that a lot of that in smaller communities really was a wake-up call for people, because I don't know what your guys' experience is, but like, I have a lot of friends who say, oh, you own a business, you've got a huge bank account. And it's like, everybody thinks that, but it's like, no, I've never been so poor in my life as I am at this very moment. And, I'd like to get to the point where I do have a big bank account, but right now that's not it. And for a lot of businesses in a lot of smaller communities, it's always a thing. Like, you're not in this for the money.
Right.
I don't think. The goal is, of course, probably some money eventually, but nobody's thinking, oh, in my first year, I want to become a millionaire. And if they are thinking that, they're probably not there after that first year.
Isn't it funny when they see growth? I think they equate that with the wealth. Obviously, you wouldn't grow if you didn't have the money, but maybe they don't understand that it's the opposite. When they see growth, it's because you've put it all back in and left nothing for yourself. Yeah,
I talked to customers and I've talked to friends of mine who stop in the store and they're like, wow, you have a lot of stuff in here. And it's like, yeah, like, just so this is $150,000 worth of goods. Like, that costs all that money. Like, it's not cheap. Like our new sign, that was $500. Like, these are things that all cost money. They look good and that they definitely serve a purpose, but it's like, until you get to where you want to be, like, it's pouring, like Melissa said, everything back in there to get there, everything that you can afford to.
Yeah. Thank you, and for what you do around that, and just trudging forward through all the challenges and dumping it all back in just to keep going and serving your community. I want to ask a couple more questions. I'm wondering if each of you can share a little bit from your perspective of the other business, Melissa on Nick's business and Nick on Melissa's, in terms of what you saw happen through reinvention, maybe what a takeaway was that you kind of learned from each other. And then I'm going to ask you to see if there's a takeaway you want to leave our listeners around, things I've learned, wisdom I've gained, anything that you can share. So Melissa, looking at Nick's business, where he started in our group in terms of the story he had and where he wanted to go and where he is right now, even listening today, what did you learn from Nick, or what stood out to you in Nick's story?
I just I always go back with Nick, like how analytical he is and how he goes back and is like, well, I tried this and the percentage of people that came in and did this. And he's always like giving descriptive, like how he's almost like formatted it and put it into,
He's very analytical.
Yeah. Yes. And that I've always admired, because I'm not like that. I'm just like, oh, well, my heart feels like I should do this. And is this going to work? I don't know. But, and I sort of run with it. So I've seen him, though, like it's like I've seen you sort of go out of your comfort zone a little bit, Nick, and push that and, try new things. I know with that log furniture, you had said, oh, hey, this is just taking up space. We're going to try, are we going to try and move it around? Are we going to try, and, reinvest, or what are we going to do with this? And it's like, I've seen you sort of change your way of thinking a lot too, where you're sort of like, you push yourself a little bit more to, go out and find some different things and try some new things, rather than, like you said, just go with the staples. Because in the end, if you're the only one that likes it, it sits on a shelf. And then the other thing too is like just you giving experiences. And I know I watch your Facebook and stuff, and you've had a lot of that on there where you're sharing stories. And I just think that's going to help you grow, because if my sons are big fishermen, well, if they're watching your feed and see like, hey, so-and-so went and bought this piece of fishing equipment and got a trophy fish from it, I want to try that, or I want to learn from them, or what can I do to make my experience better?
Good perspective. And that decisiveness we heard him talk about, we all saw how much was behind that. And, you had your numbers and you did your analytics, and I think we all were quite impressed by that. Okay, Nick, what was your takeaways from Melissa's story, from where we started to maybe where she's at right now, which is a little different place than when you first met Melissa?
Melissa, in terms of your business, was a little bit different, of course, than ours. We're established at that point. I guess I say established. What is it, I guess, really? But I think of any business that's made it past that 3-year mark as being kind of in a good spot. I can tell you were creative and you care about your customers, of course, towards the beginning, but it's not that you changed anything. I think I saw growth, and you leaned into those things that you were already good at and fed into them and got better at them. And I think that's important. There's no point, I guess, to me, of trying to fight what you're not good at and to spend all of your energy trying to improve this thing that you just sincerely don't have an aptitude for. Your energy is much better invested in trying to improve what you're already good at and build off of that. Use that as almost your foundation. So that's something that I saw throughout all of this, and I think that the program itself encourages that.
I think I'd add to that, Nick, that I think maybe Melissa from our perspective, didn't sound confident the way she does now, in feeling like she is doing things, she is making right decisions, and has a great vision, and maybe has become more confident in herself around that stuff. Would you say?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I was actually thinking about this morning is, a lot of the times when you have a small business, you're in it almost by yourself. For my example, I have my dad, but we're sitting there and it can be almost like an echo chamber. It's just what it is. And you never really know if what you're doing is right, unless, of course, you see the results. But even then, if you're anything like me, you're thinking in the back of your mind, was it smart or was it lucky?
Yeah. Such a good point.
How do I duplicate that? And you almost feel like you're just treading water by yourself. And then you get into a situation like this course where, you talk about it, and then you've got 4, 5, 6 other people there and saying, hey, that is a good idea. And you get that affirmation, and it just improves your confidence. And really, affirmation and affirming those ideas is super helpful with confidence, because you realize that maybe you're not the only one. You're not alone. And just to hear that from somebody else, whereas in most cases of the small business, you're not going to hear that.
These problems aren't unique to each businesses necessarily. That feeling of treading water and trying to figure out if you were smart or lucky is probably a common theme in almost any business. So thanks for sharing it like that. I think that makes that really describes that particular feeling really well. Like you want to be happy and proud, but yet you're not quite sure which direction to give credit. So thank you for that. All right. So I like to, kind of wrap things up, and we've had some great discussion. I think, what you've been able to share around retail specifically, I think will help a lot of listeners. But what would you want to say to someone maybe just starting out, or an entrepreneur that's entering into retail, around what you've learned, or do's and don'ts, or maybe inspirational direction around what's the right way to think about the retail industry and just being a small business owner?
Pivot. Just that's the number one thing. Is I see these businesses that are, they have one way of doing things, and that's the way that they want to do it. I don't think you can survive. I really find it hard to believe that you can stay in that same line of thinking and never make changes and survive. You've got to be able to pivot, move on to the next thing, figure it all out, and sometimes you've got to do it in a hurry. We watched that video in week 8-ish of the course, which was about sunk cost, and learning about that and being able to admit that, hey, I messed this one up. And just be able to move on. And it hurts because sometimes you are selling those goods for under what you paid for them. But you guys talked about my analytical brain. I'll sit here and tell you a little bit more about analytics. Realistically, when you look at that, and it's like, we have a great example. The last 2 years for hunting, we have had a terrible time selling hunting jackets because it's been 50 or 60 degrees during hunting. And nobody expects that in the second week of November, or the first week of November, but it's just a thing that's happened. And we sit on this product, and we've got roughly $15,000 sitting in this product that we're unable to sell. And we're like, this is horrible. And you've got to be able to, big debate that goes on between my father and I, because he's like, well, we just got to sit on it and make our money somehow. And my thought is, we've got to sell it for cost, if not a little bit below, and free up that money. And my thinking behind that is, we've got that $15,000 that's making us nothing right now. We could have that $15,000 making us 35% right now. So you've got to think of the bigger picture, not just the right here, right now, we're going to lose money on this. But if we lose 10% and make 35, then we've gained 25%, right? And if you're not making money, you're not in business. So being able to admit that, hey, this doesn't work. We're not going to do this in the future, but we need to move on from this, and we need to do it in a hurry so we can continue to make money. And that's not just stuff that's like, our example is weather controlled. We also have boots that we've totally missed on. Our price point was wrong. Our customers didn't want it. They love the boots, too expensive. It's just what it is. Sometimes you overestimate. And just moving on from that, finding the next thing, and taking the L like a champion, basically.
Boy, I wish I could bottle that little speech you just gave. That was brilliant and so true, and such a tough thing to really come to grips with, to have to acknowledge sunk costs and the things that you've spent significant money on that you thought were important, and recognize that it's not working, and back out of it and move on to something else. The moving on part's hard because you got to let go.
Especially when you think it's an excellent idea.
Yes, and you're sure that it still was an excellent idea. It's just maybe the timing was wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that's wonderful advice. Thank you, Nick. How about you, Melissa?
Pretty much keeping an open mind and never giving up. That's the thing. And it doesn't always have to be one thing is I'm always all in. and I have to be all in. I can't like, there's not like a throttle. And I think like I have sort of changed that a little bit, because I have found out that some things, even small, is still making a small change. And that small change, it might seem small to start with, but then in a year, you're like, holy smokes, that small thing has turned into a huge product line that people love. And it's like, and to keep trying, because you're always going to find things that are not going to work. That's life. I mean, but to keep that momentum and say, hey, just because this didn't work doesn't mean this next thing isn't going to work. And if you're trying something, even the smallest thing, you're still moving forward, and you're learning from that. And I think a lot of progress comes from what you learn along the way. You have to have a lot of grace and grit, and grace for yourself and grit to keep going, because in our climate, like it's COVID, it's inflation, it's all these variables that you cannot control. So what can you do? You can give people that opportunity. You can give them what they need without having to travel far, or giving people that do want to travel far an experience for the day, and just building on that. But not everything's going to go right. It's not going to be easy by any means, but in the end, hopefully it's going to be worth it.
Fantastic advice. I see some kind of inspirational sign called Grace and Grit that I want to see in your store that I can hang in my office, because that's a perfect way to put it. Being willing to try and keep going. And I know in our workshop, you did implement some smaller things that maybe felt small at the time, but I think we saw you see some real success that grew over time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good. Well, you guys, this has been a great discussion, and I think it'll be a great help and inspiration to people listening, and we are inspired by you. You are you are a tribe. You are a small business owner in a smaller community, and you play such an important role to your community and to your customers. So thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for being part of our program. And thanks for being on our podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to Lost and Found. If you want to learn more about our startup programs, go to startupscene.cc. Watch for more episodes and hear more stories from entrepreneurs and small business owners across the Midwest who were lost and then found something that changed everything. Thanks.